Good evening. Welcome to the Hog Talk Podcast, live from the Sterling Soap and Roastery Studios, part of the Believe in Buzz Radio Network, where you can hear us on 106.7 in Central Arkansas. All live shows are presented to you by Arkansas Brewing Company in downtown Ozark. I'm Porter Hayes, and alongside me, as always, is Adam Hall. We're brought to you by Bet Online, the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for everything football. Bet Online has every stat, matchup, and even live odds and spreads to bet on during the game. Think you know your stuff? Get in our $200,000 mega dollar contest and pick 5 games against the spread every week for your chance at weekly prizes and a share of $200K. When the game is over, head on over to the online casino, get in on a game of blackjack, poker, or unwind with one of our over 150 slot games. Head to the website today. Do not forget to use the promo code BLEAV for your first bet deposit. Bet online. The game starts here. And speaking of games started well for the Razorbacks, 21-7 halftime. Then the wheels fell off, losing 39-31 in double overtime to Oklahoma State. Adam, I know that going into halftime and everything, it felt good. It felt right. And then Hog's gonna hog happened. I mean, muff punts, penalties, fumbles. I mean, anything that could have went wrong in that second half did, and the score reflects that, because we'll talk about the stats here in a minute. But when we go over the stats and you see just how dominant Arkansas was in this game, there was no reason this game should have even been close.
Yeah, it was rough. You're on this high horse in the first half. Even after Oklahoma State, scored, and then Arkansas came right back and scored again. So you're like, okay, keep that distance. I felt like you had to open up the second half. Arkansas needed to score on the first drive of the second half. You needed to go up 28-7 and didn't get it. And it was just a complete night and day. Well, we saw some of the mistakes in the first half, but then Oklahoma State, finally took advantage of those. But let's be clear, neither team, wanted to put the game away. Each team had their opportunity and couldn't capitalize on it.
Missed field goals on both sides. When that guy missed that field goal, I was like, okay, we have a chance. And you just seen things. But before we get into the game, we'll kick off with the scores from around the SEC. Interesting scores. I want to point out the Alabama score, 42-16, but that thing was closer than it should have been, longer than it should have been. And you're just looking at LSU bounce back against Nicholls State. Georgia rolls. Texas imposed the will, which we knew Michigan. The Big Ten is just a joke outside of Ohio State. There's, I don't know. Well, I guess what Cal's in the ACC now. So, now we can say an ACC team beat Auburn, which, look, I'll say this. Even though Arkansas lost this game, I still feel good about the season. And it's not that, okay, here we go, we're going to be 4-8 again. There was a lot of things that if they just clean some stuff up, which you have this UAB game to clean up, we're good. But Vandy, what's going on there? 2-0, Texas A&M rolling. So you look across the board, what game stood out to you the most of the week 2 scores in the SEC?
Texas, Michigan, I think we all kind of thought that was going to happen. Even watching the pregame or whatever, you got Michael Phelps there, you've got game day. I was just still not sold on Michigan. And they proved why. Thought it was funny that, Barstool has their game day show, and they had Connor Stallions on with them. And then, handily get beat. Alabama, taken until upwards of the fourth quarter to finally pull away, because I think that was a 2 to 4 point game up until that point. They named the field after Nick Saban, so he was in attendance. And then I thought it was funny, there was one of the Alabama players, long touchdown, got called back for whatever reason, I guess, or was some penalty. and the camera shows Nick Saban when the penalty is being called, and he just has this look of detest on his face. And I'm just like, you can't take the coach out of him, especially when it comes to Alabama. Like we talked about before, Missouri, their first 4 games are cake. And it's one of those things that they shut out both opponents in the first 2 games. They're going to brag on it. That's what teams do, especially early in the season. Even when we talk about where Arkansas is at overall in the country with, whether it's offensive yards per game, explosive plays per game, or, all that, all teams do it. So Missouri's going to pump that up, that they've had 2 shutouts. I knew Tennessee was going to win, but I didn't think it was going to be that bad. And it's one of those things I was expecting to open up the stats and just see their quarterback have a field day, and he really didn't. So that was kind of surprising. But I think the biggest one was only seeing OU win by 4.
Yeah.
And South Carolina handing it to Kentucky was kind of a big deal.
Yeah, because there was a lot of talk about South Carolina falling off a little bit, and look, that's what is so frustrating about Arkansas. You take a game like this South Carolina game where you go in as an underdog and you beat them handily 31-6. If Arkansas would have held the score and won 31-21, I mean, that's huge. That is a huge difference in the game. And when you look at the stats, and it's funny that there's people, of course, after a loss, you're automatically just like, okay, here we go again. And, this is on Pittman. This is on Petrino. 640 total yards, average 7 yards a play, 33 first downs, 407 in the air, 233 yards rushing. You're 12 of 19 on third downs. And you still lost the game. So, look, I know there's going to be some people saying discipline and this and that, and it's going to be the easy target to sit there and say, this is on the coaching. None of this game was on the coaching. None of it. Because if you execute, like we said before the season, when I said I wanted to see execution. If they would have executed and not thrown pick sixes or fumbled the ball, hello, you're not putting the coaches in a position to, do I put my kicker out there that I don't trust yet? You're not doing that. So before everybody wants to jump on the coach, you can't do that, because it's the fact that none of this, and you might disagree, and I'm sure there's other people who disagree, but when this happens and you have the offensive clicking the way it was, 407 yards, you're top. Let me pull up the other photo that I was going to bring up. When you are the second ranked total offense in the country after the second week, yes, you played UAPB, but your passing offense second in the country, third in the country, 20 plus yard plays. You can't sit and say it's on the coaching, and we'll go into more depth as the show goes on, but I know where the frustration lies with Coach Pittman. I know there's frustration about all this trying to come together, and you lost a game you should have won. So you're going to have that. But this is a one game. He needs a lot of grace, because this was not anything to do with any of the coaches on that game yesterday.
Mm-hmm. Well, then, even like we talked about beforehand, there's several spots in the game that Arkansas could have capitalized. We talked about, bringing up, I think it was the Taylon Green to Broden pass in the end zone. Taylon had scrambled out to the left, threw it, it hit Broden in the hands. It's one of those things on the run that deep for it to hit his hands. It's one of the, you've got to catch it. I'm sorry, you have to. Taylon's decision-making has to improve.
Yes.
And like we talked about also before the show, the way he throws the ball out to the side, his passes float, and it doesn't matter if it's short, if it's medium, if it's whatever. His passes have too much air under it, and when you start getting into SEC play, you're going to get more than that pick six that happened against Oklahoma State. It's going to be bad if it gets to that point. Because I'm thinking, luckily we don't play in Alabama or Georgia but you're still going to go up against good defenses. And so I just think his decision making overall has to be better. And then there was a few spots, as much as we've talked about, game one. And let's back up a little bit here with this. Even with the issues yesterday with the team and the boneheaded plays, whatever else, this team is still night and day compared to last season.
Yes.
The team is still, especially the offensive line, is still night and day from last season. Yes, there were plays that blocking broke down, or somebody didn't pick up the linebacker, or whatever the case may be, and sack happened, met at the line of scrimmage, dropped for a 2-yard loss, whatever. That happened here and there throughout the game. It's still night and day from last year. I mean, Jaquindon Jackson, yes, he had plays that he was knocked behind the line or met at the line of scrimmage. He also had several plays that were 10 yards, 12 yards, 15 yards. I mean, he still had that in him, and we didn't see that last season.
Yeah. 24 carries, 149, 3 touchdowns, which all 3 was in the first half.
Mm-hmm.
But we haven't even talked about yet. Ollie Gordon only had 69 yards total offense, 49 rushing on 17 carries. By the way, you allowed the whole team as a rushing, 59 yards rushing. That's again how frustrating this is. Why did we lose this game? I mean, because it was dumb plays, timing, where you let, of course, Gordon's only touchdown was that very last one, where you're not wrapping up. They got saved on the tight end that was cooking them there at the end, and he happened to foot went out of bounds, or he would have scored. There was no arm out. It was just shoulder leaning into the body, trying to knock him out of bounds. We're not wrapping up onto the offense. You're talking about that very last play where Jackson got stuffed. If he would have pulled that guy was crashing down. He's walking into the end zone. So there is decision making to be made, and some of his throws were way off. I mean, landing 5 yards in front of the receiver. And it's tough when we come on here and criticize and give constructive criticism, because we know what this team can be. But if you're wanting to be held as a new team, we brought in this guy as a highlight reel, well, you got to give us highlight reels. And if you're not, you have to act that way. If you want to be considered one of the best quarterbacks in the conference and have that chip on your shoulder that you're rated the 13th best quarterback in the conference, if you play like you did yesterday, there's going to be questions, because your decision-making was very erratic. You had some glimpses of good plays, but then there was times where you're missing guys, the wheel route. I mean, just wide open spots. And I know that sometimes in a road environment, but that's where you're poised. You are the captain of this team, and that margin of error is very thin in a season like this. This is a game that you should have not have lost. And when you look down the rest of this SEC schedule, or this schedule, now what game are you going to replace this with? If I'm saying this is a 7-win team, I'm looking at the schedule. What game is going to replace a win? Maybe that's the Auburn game. I don't know, but that's what you have to start looking at. You can't be doing this. Say they lose to Auburn or whatever. Now you're starting to replace games and replace wins, just become bowl eligible. You're digging yourself a hole, and this was one of them games you really needed.
Yeah, and then looking at just even the special teams, I get that Satania's got to secure the ball, and I think everybody at first thought that let me see the numbers here, that TJ Metcalf was the one that got basically pushed into or fell in front of Satania that made him muff that. But that was a freshman, Crossy Johnson, or whatever, however you pronounce his first name. That's things like that cannot happen. I thought that there were a few different times in that our guys were getting pushed around right around Satania to not give him space. It's one of those that the defenders weren't going to touch him. They were just going to push Arkansas players into Satania. Your guys are going to, be the reason that and it happened. And we see the bounce back really from Jaquin Jackson like last week, the fumble, and then he was just sure hands the rest of the game. There were still issues. I mean, he, on the pitch, he took his eyes off the ball. He started looking ahead right as it hit his hands. And I don't know if there's also some miscues from the center to Taylon Green, but there was a few times that maybe Taylon was looking up instead of looking at the ball whenever he's going to snap it. And, him dropping snaps.
The biggest play, I totally forgot about the play. The biggest play that really threw a red flag for me when it came to Taylon Green was when he checked Jackson over to the right side of the formation. And then he spun to the left. He's the one that adjusted the play and still went the wrong way and then somehow got a yard. But when he hiked and spun the opposite direction and you had two Oklahoma State guys there, that's on him. You can't check your own play and then not know what you check to.
Well, and there was another play too. I think after that he didn't check anybody, he didn't move anybody, but so they snapped the ball and Jaquin goes wherever he was going, but it wasn't the direction that Taylon was faking the handoff to. Yeah. So he just kind of stuck the ball out and then took off running. And now, granted, he got like a 12-yard gain, 14-yard gain or something, but it was one of those things that you see it, and then that moment pause, you're just like, what are you doing? Mm-hmm. I mean, there was no running back there, and you're handing the ball out. And I mean, you're lucky there wasn't a linebacker coming at you.
Yeah, and on the defensive side, there was signs of, look, I don't want to downplay a kid at all. I mean, they won the game, but you can't sit there and tell me that quarterback was good enough to sit there and throw for 326 on you. You're talking about floating balls. That one that he threw up at the end of the game, it was just hung there. He had three guys around it, and the Oklahoma State receiver happened to catch it. And then just the poor tackling. I mean, running defense, perfect. You cannot ask for a better performance out of that defensive front and those linebackers, which both have had major questions coming into this season. 59 yards rushing against any team. I don't care who it is. That is superb. So if I have to give my highlight where I can't say anything bad about, it would be the run defense, because granted, you did break on one play and Gordon scored, but look, you're asking them to do that 60 minutes and then 2 overtimes, and they let one play go. Mm-hmm. But that's all it takes in college football too. So it's a rebuild week. Yeah, I'm going to say that, because you're going to have to rebuild the hype off the UAPB game. You had so many people hyped up for Arkansas. You had so many people who knew this team was coming off a 4-8 season. National, Blaine Crane. You had RJ Young. Everybody pulling for Arkansas. Everybody's pulling for Arkansas to be successful. They have the chance to be the darling of college football this year. And once again, here we go. And I compare it to the BYU, a game that was winnable. Now you lose a game just the same way, in fashion of you're blowing lead, a game you knew you were supposed to win. Now you're going into this 1-1 instead of 2-0. And more importantly, possibly going into that Auburn game 2-1 instead of undefeated going into Jordan-Hare.
Well, one thing that we talked about before the season that we all, I think, the majority of fans thought was depth. Depth will be an issue. And I think we saw that yesterday. And again, I'm not coming at Landon Jackson, but 2 tackles, I think it was. There was times in the second quarter that, I mean, his arms are up. He's trying to catch his breath. He was gassed, and it's just one of those that I know he went out of practice Thursday with an apparent shoulder injury. He still played, but that's not going to make you that gassed come, 2 days later, a day and a half later. It's just, I honestly, we saw a lot more of a Anton Jukoc than I thought we would see. And he was all over the line. I was pleasantly surprised for the most part. But like you said, I mean, we shut down a Heisman hopeful the entire game. He could not get it. And then you couple that with, in the first half, their quarterback couldn't do anything. I mean, it was one of those, once you saw that we're stopping him, when they finally gave him the ball, because there was a while in the first half. I mean, they were truly trying to get their passing game going, and they couldn't do it. So you're just like, okay, here we go, and then your coverage starts breaking down. I mean, even though Jaheim Singletary got that pick, he got picked on quite a bit. On little short to medium passes, he was out of position.
Yeah, you can. Here's the thing, Bobby Petrino was talking about that UAPB game and didn't want to play it. Just give him the $1 million. Exactly the point of why I said that they should have kept the starters in for at least another quarter. You can't sit there and not play a half, and then you come in and right after that, you're playing a full 4-quarter game, and then it goes into overtime. They're not conditioned. You're playing all of this against your own team, in a controlled environment. You go out and you blow people out. They're coming out at halftime, and then the very next game, you're in a 4-quarter battle. I can see why he's gassed, because you got to condition yourself, and that's partly, if you want to say anything that was on the coaching part, it possibly taking them all out at halftime. I don't care what the score was and who the opponent was. This is about your team and you getting better every play and getting those reps in. And now, like you said, if he's gassed, maybe come back to bite him in the ass, but you got to have, an important as this season, and you got to dot your I's, cross your T's, because you have to bounce back. And this is another game that you're going to have to win handily. I'm sorry. And that brings up this point right here. Do we give Malachi a chance to play in the UAB game? Absolutely. Absolutely. And Adam, I'll let you touch further on that. You were talking about that before we went on the air.
I think that he should get a chance. And here I'm going to say this before I go into this. I am not saying at this point Taylon Green needs to be replaced. Totally not saying that. I am saying in a game like this against UAB, let Taylon, get his reps in, try to get his timing down, whatever it is. Just keep working on what you've been working on. Sometime in the second half, I would like to see Malachi Singleton. I think you need to have Malachi Singleton ready to go in case, whether it be injury, whether it be that you decide that there needs to be a quarterback change at any given time. He needs to be ready. He sat for 2 years. He has shown that he can play. He has shown his decision making. I mean, granted, yes, it was UAPB, but just watching him and his presence and him commanding the offense, I think he deserves a shot at it. So let him go in against UAB. Let him get ready before you go into Jordan Hare, just in case something happens that you feel like you need to make a switch.
Perfect. Yes. And another thing, put some heat on Taylon Green. Let him know. Look, my biggest thing with KJ Jefferson was that he didn't have a true threat for somebody to come in and take his job. You put some serious heat, and I think Bobby Petrino's the perfect coach for it. And Courtney Mims, when we had her on, she was talking about look at Tyler Wilson. You've had these backups that you can bring in. You put that seat hot and make him think that his job is in jeopardy, and then see how. Because look, you think it has nothing to do with confidence in that. Well, you know what? If you have doubt that he's going to be your leader through this season, there's nothing wrong with trying to see what your backup can do. Because you think that the same thing with Bobby Petrino putting Singleton in that, more reps in the 2s or with the 1s, and it puts all that's doing is creating poise. It's creating leadership. It's creating, I want to take this team over. Then he comes out and balls out, and then he goes into Jordan Hare, and if he does the same thing and they win, now we're back on track. There's nothing wrong with putting competition in that. Everybody wants to be so complacent and think that after one bad game, blah, blah, blah. Well, you can't afford to lose these games, because look it on down the road. You're going to win this game against UAB, but then you got a gauntlet.
Well, and that's one of those things they touched on a lot in pregame and leading up, like first quarter, whatnot. Arkansas heading into the game, you're not ranked. Again, I think they received 2 votes after week 1, whatever. But Oklahoma State ranked 16th. So this is a game that now that you have an expanded playoff, you've got 12 teams. Every game at this point matters. It's one of those things that you can't afford to lose games, or especially, if you have these key matchups like this. So you have to win these games. You could have basically ended Oklahoma State's chance outside of them winning the Big 12 to get to the playoff.
Exactly.
That's their only guarantee is if they were to win. But they won, so they can keep that rolling. You could have just ended their playoff chances. You gave them now that opportunity. And if you want to go into every game thinking like that, like, hey, here's a team that's got a playoff chance, I'm going to ruin it, go for it. Be the bad guy. We've talked about that before. We were looking at that last year at the end of the season. There was nothing to play for. Go ruin somebody's season, but it didn't happen. Same thing with the basketball team when, with the struggles. It was one of those things. Go in there and ruin somebody's season, but you couldn't do it.
Yeah. You had a chance to shock the world. Even the ones who had you picked to win, you had a chance to blow this game wide open. And I want to go back to Matt's first comment that I skipped over. It does not fall solely on the head coach. It's hard to say a disconnect with the team. The culture has nothing to do with fumbles and pick sixes and checking off a play and then not knowing your own play. That's not on the coach. Some of this has to fall on the players. And I know Pittman and the staff is the easy targets right now. I after this performance and how I watched this team lose this game, 0% falls on the coaching, in my opinion, because you look at the defense. You had a chance to get the ball back. You had a chance to close that game out. And then what'd you do? You picked a guy up and you slammed him. Yes, it was a piss poor call. You shouldn't have called that, but you can't put the game in those hands of where you pick a guy up knowing you can't pick him up and slam a guy down anymore. You did that. And it's just things like that. Has nothing to do with coaching. I'm sorry. It's hard for me to just want to call a scapegoat and just call out the coaches for this. They've done their stuff in the past. There's things that I've been on Pittman and staff before, but you can't say that the coach is calling the plays. You went for 407 and it's just, again, it's hard for me to this game. Now, if this becomes a trend and we're not seeing any improvement, or we're not seeing anything out of the players, then okay, those moments could be on the coaches. But there was nothing about yesterday's game that made me think one thing, that you're going to blame this on the coaches.
I think a lot of people's irritation, and even me, I'm the one that picked Oklahoma State to win out of our pick'ems, out of everything. I did. I didn't want to, but I did. But at the same time, like I said, I would gladly eat crow if I was wrong. But the frustration came for a lot of us because the game was there. You had the chances to put the game away and you couldn't do it. And I think a lot of people would have been, yes, mad, but we would have rather have lost more decisively than losing like that.
Yeah. Well, and here's the deal, and this is not to boost your ego, but you proved us right because of your reasoning on why they would lose the game, because all these games, they've done this same thing where they're coming into this game and then they let you down. You're speaking as a true fan. I know there's a lot of people, well, you didn't pick Arkansas. You're the one guy. You don't have no faith in the Hogs. Well, no, I mean, you don't until proven otherwise. So, until something happens differently, you had every right to be like, well, I don't see Arkansas winning this type of game. And I don't it could have been Texas Tech. It could have been Oklahoma State. It could have been Kansas State. It's this type of game, just like the BYU game, that type of opponent where you should have won the game and you didn't. So,
yeah, but we'll see how they bounce back.
Yeah, and we're going to take a quick break. After the break, we'll keep rolling with this. We'll talk about the UAPB, but we'll dive more into that, the whole, hey, what has to happen with the whole Singleton? What has to happen with the defense? Who needs to step up, with these leaders and this buy-in and everything? Let's talk about that after the break. Searching for premium brewery products that will take your daily routine to the next level? Look no further than Sterling Soap Company. Our handmade soaps, aftershaves, and balms are made with only the finest ingredients that give you the ultimate grooming experience. With a variety of scents to choose from, there's something for everyone. Plus, our products are crafted in small batches to ensure the highest level of quality. So why wait? Visit www.sterlingsoap.com or visit our retail store at 16 West Walnut Street in Paris, Arkansas. Shop our collection and discover the difference for yourself. Upgrade your grooming routine with Sterling Soap Company. Are you looking for a place to grab a cold drink and some delicious food? Look no further than Arkansas Brewing Company. Located at 201 South 1st Street in beautiful downtown Ozark, our establishment offers a wide selection of craft beers and tasty eats. But what sets us apart is our welcoming atmosphere and friendly staff. At Arkansas Brewing Company, you'll always feel like part of the family. So visit Destiny and Christopher Brockett and staff today and see for yourself what makes us the go-to spot for locals and visitors alike. Arkansas Brewing Company, come for the drinks and stay for the friends. Attention DIYers and home improvement enthusiasts. Are you searching for the right tools and the supplies to tackle your next project? Look no further than Mentor's Hardware Store. With locations in Ozark, Alma, and Clarksville, our vast selection of hardware and building materials is sure to have everything you need. Whether you're fixing a leaky faucet or building a new deck, plus our knowledgeable staff is always on hand to offer expert advice and guidance. And with our competitive prices and convenient online ordering, Mentor's Hardware Store is your one-stop shop for all your DIY needs. Visit us today and let's build something amazing together. Are you looking to take your career to the next level? Look no further than ATU Ozark Campus. As a 2-year satellite campus of Arkansas Tech University, we're dedicated to a quality workforce education, industry partnerships for in-demand jobs, and tailored paths for success. Our programs are led by industry professionals. Whether it's a certificate or you're aiming for a graduate degree, ATU Ozark has you covered. Visit our website at www.atu.edu/Ozark or contact us at 479-667-2117. Your future begins here. Welcome to Ozark Area Chamber of Commerce, where our mission is simple: encourage, promote, and aid an enduring environment of shared economic opportunity and civic development for the Ozark, Arkansas area. Whether you're a local business owner or a resident, we've got something for you. Shop our unique local businesses, explore the beauty of Ozark, and savor local flavors and find cozy accommodations. Join us in building a stronger community. And to learn more, contact us at 479-667-2525. Remember, together we thrive. And welcome back to Hog Talk Podcast. Before the break, we were talking about, the possible disconnect and fans, listen to me. I just think a lot of this is just PTSD. Y'all are so used to losing games like this. And I've seen disconnect. I've seen when teams aren't bought into this program. But in this game, this instance, I can't see how fumbles, taking your eye off the ball, missing reads, missing plays, not knowing when to pitch. When do we start having the accountability of, and I know, I would love to say, hey man, this is coaching, but it's not what happened. Me and Adam were talking about this before we went on there, and there's a thin line between when do you just want to say it's the coach because you don't want to call out the players. We're in this world now where you can't really say bad things about players because then you just have everybody thinking you're talking trash about them and you're really stating the obvious of what happened. And yes, we're even talking about the whole potential of, hey, what if Malachi comes in and does a great job? You want that from a backup. I mean, hell, it was UAPB, but he went 8 for 10, 120. I mean, he showed what he could do. Why not give him that chance? And if you want this team to be successful, you want that discipline, guess what you have to do? You have to hold the people that are wrong accountable. You can't say, well, these coaches have this and these coaches have that. I'm sure this team, these coaching staff get on their players. But as fans, you have to portray the accountability. We can't just come on here and say, just because you can't say accountability, and if we think it's the players, we'll just blame it on the coach. That's the easiest thing to do.
It's a little, it's both. I mean, we can be honest.
Yeah.
Players execution, or, players execute coach is coach. It's one of those things. Are these things happening in practice? We don't know. I mean, I haven't heard from any of the media that it is happening. So, it's easy. But like Sam, Coach Pittman's been the scapegoat for the past 2 seasons. So I get it. But it's one of those things that is it falling solely on him, or why aren't we, everybody wants to go after Coach Pittman, but what about the coordinators? What about the position coaches? I mean, you don't really hear many people coming after them. Now, you do have some people essentially talking out of their ass when it comes to calling out Petrino. Oh, maybe. I mean, I don't know how many comments I've saw yesterday that was, is this the offensive genius y'all wanted to know? Is he lost his touch? And I'm sitting here like, he's put up over 600. His offense has put up over 600 yards the past 2 games. What are you talking about? We went from last season, granted, the full season, full scheme of things, you averaged 320 to 340 a game. Even in those non-conference games, you're in the 400s. And here we are 200 plus yards ahead of that. It's one of those things that it's a lot of it's just because it's easy. I'm going to come after Coach Pittman because it's easy. I'm going to make a dumb comment about Coach Petrino because it's easy. But here again, you can criticize these players. You can critique these players. You don't have to come after them personally. Just tell me about a play. Tell me about where they messed up. Leave it at that. Tell them about, like we've been talking about Taylon Green and his decision making and his accuracy issues. That's it. I mean, it's all said and done at that point, and that's okay. It's okay that people do that. There's this line that people want to come after the coaches because I don't know, because it's easy, because they make the most money. But at the same time, hey, these players make money now too. Mm-hmm. So they're, kind of open themselves up to more of critiques and criticism, in my opinion, now that you're making the money that you're making.
Bobby Petrino took an offense and an offensive line that had the biggest discrepancies. Couldn't run through broadside of the barn. Now they're averaging 255 a game, 11 touchdowns already. Yes, UAPB. Yes, Oklahoma State. But you ran for 234 yesterday. I remember when Brett Bielema, he wanted 250 in the air and 250. He wanted 250 offense, balance. Well, when your offense, your passing goes for 407 and you run for 234, you can't. Again, I'm going to point out where the good is good. I mean, that was a good offensive performance. We just need to clean things up. With that being said, all is not lost because, again, look what this offense can do. Look what this defense can do is shut down one of the premier backs in all of college football. You see the promise that everybody, Bobby Jones, I thought somebody would have to do a welfare check on him. He was so, really, he was so upset about the game. John Neighbors, they said he just walked home. People are frustrated about this, and every right. I understand in the past what Coach Pittman's done. We've been through all of this. We've seen the Chad Morris years, the John L. Smith years, Brett Bielema, Pittman, all that. Chad Morris, we've seen it. We know that you can't lose games like that. We know that. But when you have to call a spade and not be afraid to be like, well, if X, Y, and Z doesn't happen, you're up 28-7 or you're up 35-7 and you're closing the door on this game and you're moving on 2-0 looking at UAB.
The thing I think that we can all agree on is, we talked about the what ifs of this game before the game. How did they lose close? Did they get blown out? Did they this? Did they that? How do you bounce back from that against UAB to prepare yourself for Auburn? You've got to have a short memory. You've got to go in and get ready because, like we said, Auburn just lost to Cal. So they've got, I think, more issues than a lot of us thought they had. I was honestly waiting for Hugh Freeze to Hugh Freeze and, them just kind of screw the pooch. But Jordan Hare is still a tough place to play in. We obviously know how Arkansas games turn out there. I'm looking at you, Bo Nix. So it's one of those things that you just got to get ready. As of today, as of tomorrow, whenever you come back into practice, forget about it. I mean, obviously work on those ball handling issues, your accuracy, work on those things, but just go in there, get ready for UAB, make it look like Oklahoma State was a fluke.
And I want to bring up this point again because the whole thing about Pittman isn't the guy. I understand he has that as faults, but let's be real. Ed Ogeron won a national championship with 2 amazing coordinators, proving to the point that if you let Bobby Petrino do his job and he executes that offense, Travis Williams comes in and he builds his defense and he's executing his defense. You're putting this together. Pittman, they'll start winning games. And he's, again, the easy target because he's the head coach. He's the one making all the money. But as a head coach, you're overseeing the whole program. It's up to the offensive coordinator's job to run that offense and have that fine-tuned. You're like Pittman's the superintendent, and then you have your supervisors. Travis Williams is the supervisor of the defense. Bobby Petrino is the supervisor of the offense. There's more responsibility when it comes to the offense and defense with your coordinators, but it's Sam Pittman's job to check those coordinators. Let them do their job. You check them if things aren't going right. But if things are going right and you're holding in 59 yards rushing, and the fact that you held them pretty much the whole, other than the miscues, you can't turn the ball over and then just let them score points. But there was a lot of promise in this game that carrying on this season last year, we're already like, well, this season's over. You look what schedules ahead after the BYU game, and you're like Texas A&M. Now you look at Texas A&M, Auburn, Mississippi State. You're like, okay, we can win some of those games. Can you beat Texas? Look at Texas. You're not going to beat Texas, But those are the things where you can't get in that hole of, well, this might be a team that I thought we could beat, but now we can't. Because there's not too many of those left on the schedule.
Now, and looking at, we've talked about the offense a lot and the players and Petrino and everything, and we've praised the run defense.
Mm-hmm.
We've praised what they did. Fact is so Oklahoma State scored 39 points, and one of those was a defensive touchdown.
Yep.
So there's obviously, Oklahoma State capitalized when they needed to. And it was dumb mistakes that put them, because nothing was like necessarily some big 80-yard bomb or, some breakaway, whatever. Miscues and penalties, and whether it was pass interference, whether it was hits, pass or whatever else, you gave Oklahoma State opportunity, short fields to score, and they scored. That comes back on Travis Williams and the defense. So here we're talking about Taylor, we're talking about accuracy, we're talking about Petrino. Well, let's switch gears a little bit, because there was some of the secondary that they were getting picked apart. They were getting picked on, and it happened more often than not.
And there was a couple of drives that luckily the defense didn't break. They held them to 2 possessions in a row of field goals, so you look at what could have been. It could have been worse the other way. If they would have scored and capitalized, scored touchdowns on those 2 drives instead of holding to the field goals, we're looking at a total different ballgame. But we're also, when we're going back, we're looking at a total different ballgame of what Arkansas should have done, being up 21-7. And I brought up the whole, I know they had Brady and Aranda at LSU. What I'm saying is, it's not as much on the head coach when it comes to, if you get the well-oiled machine. Again, I brought up Dabo and what he did with Venables and Elliott. You get that staff and you have that triangle of head coach and your coordinator running a good one, then you're going to win more games than you lose. And they still have the opportunity to win more games than they lose this year. It's not all out. Like I said before, after last year's game against BYU, you're like, okay, done. You still have games you can win. You can still make a bowl game. There's still a lot of promise because this is still a talented team. And we're not saying change. We're not saying Singleton should be the starter, but we're saying that if he is doing what he's doing, he needs the opportunity just in case, because then you're having a situation where Hornsby comes in when he's not ready, and then it brings KJ in before he's healthy.
And I think back to last week, I believe it's on the Wednesday show. You asked me what would change if Arkansas won in my season predictions. Even with Arkansas losing yesterday, I would still bump up my predictions after yesterday's game, because I think you can clean up all the dumb little mistakes, the dumb penalties, the little miscues. So yes, I'm on record as saying my prediction of 3-9 was from last November. I stood on it, but I also talked about the games that are swing games that could go either way. Even if you want to throw all that out, the team that we saw yesterday has the ability to still win 5-6 games.
Mm-hmm.
They just have to clean up those miscues, those dumb mistakes, those dumb penalties. And at the same time, you're going to have to mentally prepare. And obviously, it's not going to be this week. It may not even be against Auburn.
Yeah. And, look, Auburn's
that you are the complete underdog, and you have to come in with the mentality that Arkansas used to have a lot of. And I'll go back to the Houston Nut days, that you've got a ranked opponent in front of you, but they're in your house and you're going to protect it. Not trying to quote whoever the announcer was during the Joe Adams punt return, Houdini's in the house. But, it's one of those things that put a chip on your shoulder, come out and smack people in the face. And just move on from yesterday.
Yeah. And Auburn has a little warm up before they play New Mexico before Arkansas. Arkansas has UAB. But I'll tell you what, look, this is a Cal team, not a very good Cal team. They only rushed for 126 and they passed for 233 against Auburn. Auburn only ran as a team 156, and they were only able to Peyton Thorne pass for 165. He was 14-27 with one touchdown, sacked 3 times. This was a team that blew you out last year. We're talking about tale of two teams. You can't judge a book by a cover saying, well, Arkansas is 4-8. This is automatically a blowout. Well, you can't just automatically say that one Auburn blew you out. Look how they played against Cal. They should have won this game handily. But does that show about who they are? Now, you do have a dual threat quarterback in Peyton Thorne, because minus the sacks on the passing attack, he was 15 carries for 69 yards and 165 through the air. That should give you a little bit of ease of knowing you don't have the gauntlet that you thought you had. You have an A&M team that is not an A&M team that you thought they were. So let this loss happen. Like Pittman did say, flush it. Let's move on and hope that these are just mistakes, a one-game mistakes, and you can clean this up. And we talk about coaching, and we talked about this. Now, look, if this team doesn't bounce back and they have the same mistakes against Auburn after having UAB and then going in, then we can be like, okay, they had plenty of time to get this stuff corrected. What's going on?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Talking about Auburn and Arkansas, they both have, 1 week to prepare for each other. So I think Peyton Thorne for Auburn is going to be the one that makes or breaks their season. So I've not been sold on him since he came into Auburn. So it's one of those things that just, like I said, use your practice, clean up the mess, clean up the nonsense. Honestly, yesterday, I was texting somebody and I was just like, they better not speak on their entire way home. Like, nobody should say a word. You just sit and reflect your entire trip back home.
Yeah, and then let's look at the A&M game. You got beat by a Notre Dame team who we seen what happened to Notre Dame, an overrated Notre Dame team. So it gives you hope. Hog fans, there's hope. Taylor Green can sit here and turn this around. They can go on a 3-game winning streak. You know what I'm saying? Then you're looking at your 4-1. Don't take this loss and just, there's no reason to. What I'm looking at from teams that they are left on their schedule, and I've watched them play, A&M, Auburn, these are 2 winnable games that have always been hard to win. You win those 2 games, guess what? We're right back on the same track. We're not having these conversations of the coaches are doing this and that, because if they go into the Tennessee game, you're 4-1. You ain't saying nothing about the coaching because you've beat 3 quality opponents. It's washed that Oklahoma State loss away because now you've got 2 conference wins. Again, that's hope because you're still scoring point, or you got to execute. The play caller, Bobby Petrino, you're averaging 400 yards through the air. So let's show our frustration, but hopefully we can turn this thing around.
Yeah, like it's week 2, or week 2 just ended. Still got 10 more games to go. I don't think anybody should be calling for any coach's job at this point. So it's one of those things. Just let the season go. This team has not given up like we saw previously. They've still got fight in them. So let them figure this out. Let's see what they're made of. Let's see what these guys have left in them.
And and hopefully the good thing is you have a team in UAB that you can take out your frustrations on. This is going to be the home opener. Look, 3:15. This is not an 11 a.m. kickoff. It's 3:15. Get up there, and it's your only home game in September. So, that's your only home game in Fayetteville in September. So come out, show this team you still support them, because they can easily turn this thing around. And look, you talk about, I know we're going way on down the schedule, but Tennessee won big, but their quarterback was making just the same kind of mistakes and making the same kind of decisions that even when the game was in hand, he was still turning the ball over. It is a high-powered offense, but when you look at the schedule, you have Tennessee in Fayetteville. You start building this momentum. Now, what a game that could get away from you. You win these games against UAB, Auburn, and A&M. You have a hell of a lot more confidence going into this Tennessee game, and then LSU, which they're having their own issues too, which is a night game in Fayetteville.
We know how those turn out.
So,
all I know is the Arkansas UAB game. I think the line opened up at like 22. So I think you need to go in this game and win by about 35-40. Just go in pissed off.
Mm-hmm.
Go show the fans that have been waiting for you to play in Fayetteville what you've got, that you missed them, and just come light it up at Razorback Stadium.
Yes, UAB coming off a 32-6 loss to ULM. So I would much rather, unless you're really trying to see what Single can do. If this starts to be where Green's having his issues, and you really want to see what Single can do, I want to see not a repeat of UAPB, but I want to see, because you got a gauntlet coming ahead of you. You cannot take your starters out at halftime and then expect them not to be gassed. And hopefully you brought up a good point, and they see that. Look, we can't sit there and let them play a half and expect them to play 3 games in a row for 4-quarter games. We need these guys in there 3.5 quarters, 3 quarters. Then let's bring in the other guys and see what they can do. But I want this team to have success. We all want this team to have success, but we really have to kind of, and it's hard. I understand. Lived in the state all my life. I know the frustrations that Razorback fans have when it comes to this team. And when you lose the game the same way as you're used to seeing, it's perfectly understandable. But we have to really take a step back and look at the game, break the game down, and be like, okay, there's still a lot of hope. This team could still be 4-1. If they do, that's yet to be seen.
We'll see what happens. Like I said, long season ahead. Get it out of your own head. I think one of the dumbest things these guys could do is get on social media and entertain the comments and such. Just go in and handle your business. And hopefully the coaches are on them to do that too.
Yeah. And when you're in a season and you're trying to prepare, look, I know this takes away people's freedom and stuff. I understand everybody has a freedom of speech and there, but it's hard for me to, if you have things to focus on, it's easy to get caught up and addicted to that social media and those Twitter trolls and Instagram comments and Facebook posts, So I would love it if they weren't on social media at all, just for the fact that you're just leaving that door open to get caught up in some stupid troll and take your focus on, man, we got to bounce back and we have to win this game. We have to go into Auburn and win that game. We have to go into Tennessee, or Tennessee coming to Fayetteville and win that game. There's a lot of things more pressing right now at rebuilding this team and rebuilding this program. This is a very important year for the athletic program, much less just this season. You could sit there and prove that 9-3 season wasn't a fluke. With the right pieces, this program can win again, and you're building your program up to where you're going to get more recruits. So, you're fine.
Maybe we'll see Pittman drop another middle finger to the referee. Maybe we won't.
Yeah, and that's the thing too. There were some questionable calls. There was, but it's easy to say. But when Auburn gives you just as many chances to win the game as you did, you got to. That's a wash and move on. But we'll see what happens this Saturday. Hopefully everything bounces back. That's good. I know you're coming back with a Hog HQ crew at 8. Again, we were going to go for Monday nights, but I mean, junior high football has games on Mondays and Thursdays for the next 4 weeks. So we're going to come to you on Sunday evenings at 6:30. Hog HQ is going to follow up at 8. Get the double dose of Hog content on Sunday night. So, Adam, you got anything else?
No. See y'all in about a half hour.
There you go. All right. Well, that will do it for this episode of the Hog Talk podcast. Adam will catch you here in about 30 minutes or so, but we'll catch you on Wednesday, our new time for our second show. But again, be sure to stay on, catch DP, Matt, and Adam to give their thoughts on yesterday's game, and we'll catch you on Wednesday.